America? You look like you need a holiday. A fair dinkum holiday. In the land of wonder. The land down under. Now, there's a few things I got to warn you about. Firstly, you're going to get wet. Because the place is surrounded by water. Oh, and you're going to have to learn to say good day. Because every day's a good day in Australia.
G'day, Paul.
G'day, love. Of course, you'll have to get used to some of the local customs, like getting a suntan in the restaurant, playing football without a helmet, and calling everyone mate. Thanks, mate.
She's right, mate.
Apart from that, no worries. You'll have the time of your life in Australia. Of course, we talk the same language. Although you lot do have a funny accent. Oh, before you rush out to book your Aussie holiday, call this toll-free number for your free Aussie holiday book. Come on. Come and say g'day. I'll slip an extra shrimp on the barbie for you.
Come and say g'day.
Welcome in, everyone. Oh, damn, mate. Hang on, give me a second. Okay, now I'm right. Welcome in, everyone. Welcome in, Camilla. Welcome in, Ariel, Mr. Hemi, Grover, Charlotte. Good to see everyone in here. That is so cringe. That has got to be one of the worst ads that was ever made. I can't believe how bad that was. And no, don't believe hoax. We don't call them shrimps. We call them prawns. Welcome in, Sheila and Artemisa. Now, I was tossing up which thing to start with. I have a few new things today. I will be asking for assistance to choose one song. So I'm going to just play one of these for you for starters before we launch in.
Well, I met Professor Dan down at the county store. He said, I've got a brain map and a whole lot more. He had a 5-eye word and a shining new grin. Straight from the online thesaurus, he was cashing them in. He said, vivid means cheap and opaque means clear. I said, damn, that ain't right. He said, I learned it this year. He talked so slick, you'd swear he knew the town, till you listen real close and the meaning fell down. He could tell you all about a polygraph test, every wire, every needle, every puff in the chest, what the sweat on your palm means, what the blink of your eye, how the little machine knows if you're telling a lie. He described it in detail, every minuscule part, but the facts went missing like a hole in his heart. He was accurate sounding, but that's where it ends. A mile of good spelling in a yard of no sense. And he leaned right in like he had the cure for every old problem a person endures. Psychobabble, he'd murmur, I know how it goes. Then he'd trip on the jargon from his head to his toes. Professor Dan, oh, Professor Dan, he reads one page and he thinks he can. Professor Dan, oh, Professor Dan, all that noise no understand. Oh, Professor Dan. Professor Dan. He's an expert on hounds and the scent in the air, on police line chalk and a flashlight glare, on search and rescue where the mud runs deep, on the way a lost soul breaks and a secret won't keep. He'll talk addiction, trauma, ADHD, like every psychiatrist calls him up for free. Doc, what's your advice? He'll say with a grin, then he'll answer himself before the truth gets in. Professor Dan, oh, Professor Dan, he reads one page and he thinks he can. Professor Dan, oh, Professor Dan, all that noise no understand. Oh, Professor Dan. Professor Dan. Well, he's got every answer in a digital pile, but the more he explains it, the less it feels like he's got confidence, sure, and a dazzling pose, but he's mixing up wisdom with the words he chose. Now he's 10 feet taller in the key of G, still wrong as a fence post, plain as can be. He's a master of nothing, but he sure loves the sound of his own big opinions circling around. So if you need a lesson in what not to do, call Professor Dan and he'll prove it to you. He's full of big talk and a borrowed brain. Every word sounds smart, but it lands in the drain.
Okay, now we can move on. Obviously, it's a work in progress. I haven't actually gone through the subtitles, the closed captions yet to make sure they're accurate. There's 2 different versions, so I will play the other version later on. I think Bonza and I have narrowed down which one we prefer. But I thought I'd play both versions for you today, but I won't do it back to back because it does my head in. Oh yeah, I should have put that line in about his drug abuse disorder being in remission. I really should. Well, that's a good idea, Karen. And welcome in, by the way. Welcome in anyone who I haven't said welcome in to. This is just the first mock-up in terms of I'll go in and basically work in the studio where I create the images and come up with a handful of images and then possibly animate some of them depending on how much of my credit I use up. I know the only problem I have with these AI things is that it tends to make him look kind of a bit more suave. Oh, for sure. That's got to be in it. I like that idea. I will definitely be working on that as well. So, yeah, this is just the beginning, and I'll keep working on it. I realised I haven't included a Pokeball anywhere in this one, so I probably need to somehow do that. But it's a work in progress. Like I said, there's 2 versions. I'll play the other version later on in the live stream. I won't play them back to back. I also have another one which I contemplated holding and just sharing with members first, but I might share it later on. I'll see. Anyway, so oh yeah, Karen, can you jot these ideas down and just email me, please? Because you know that by the end of the live stream, I will have forgotten these suggestions. And then when I'm sitting there later on, I'll be like, oh, you know, Karen had some really good ideas and I've forgotten them already. Because you're so spot on. You got it completely. This will probably take a few days for me to animate, obviously, especially because I've got like a thing after this live stream. So welcome in, Vibes. Good to see you here. Anyway, so on the topic of Professor Dan, I am going to jump straight into the audio today. I know I said yesterday that I would talk about Parker in this morning's live stream, but honestly, I'm just so angry about the situation because I can't get past the fact of him somehow getting out of that day home. So I don't think me talking about it is going to be a good thing right now because I'm just too angry. Because at the end of the day, there were adults that were responsible for that little boy who lost track of him and didn't realise he was missing for half an hour. And it's because of them. It's because of their negligence. It's because clearly some protocols can't have been followed. So I'm just far too angry to even talk about it right now. I went and got a bunch of news clips and I got the press conference. And I was going to do a video last night where I just spoke about the press conference and the videos, and I couldn't make myself do it because at the moment, it's too much. Okay, so before I get choked up again, let's move on to Daniel, because it's always good to look at Daniel and have a laugh and then forget about the other crap in the world. I'm the same, Grover, and that's there's too many thoughts right now that I just don't want to vocalize in terms of just the whole situation was just wrong. It was so wrong. He was let down so badly.
Like, I don't have anything bad to share.
Oh, and I've run this back a little bit in case you can't guess, because it just helps to kind of get the context. Oh, they did they? Oh, wow. I might try and do a video later on with that. But I'm not going to make any promises because I just feel so heartbroken over this little man. But that's, yeah. Anyway, moving on. It was Wade. Wade said that Daniel had a green tint to his skin, and he thought it was the drugs. Yeah. Such a heartbreaking situation. I just hope that there's a petition which I should be mentioning as well. And I will add the petition to the link for the petition. I will add that in the description for this live stream after I finish. And also do a post for the petition. And I'd really dearly love everyone to sign the petition to get a improved alert system throughout Canada. Because we can't have this again. And, if the staff had noticed straight away that he was gone, even if they didn't catch up with him down the street, if an alert had gone out in that first hour, it could have made a difference. And I know we shouldn't think of the ifs, but right now that's kind of where I'm at, which is why I'm not, here I say I'm not talking about it, but keep blurting it out. But yeah, okay, so let's focus on Daniel because it's just easier right now.
Say really about Cheryl. I mean, she can say whatever she wants about me. I don't care. But the only thing that she has to say about me is what she heard from Malaya. That's what all of these people that have come out and that know Malaya, it's just Malaya tells them these crazy things about me and they just run with it. Like Anita has never met me before. She doesn't know me. Mm-hmm. But yet she just goes on about all these random things that are just crazy. Like Malaya's a prostitute. Daniel pimped out Malaya. Daniel drugged Malaya. Like what? Like these are all just massive clickbait shit because, I think like Anita's main thing is she seeks validation. There was some aspect of her life where she never received the validation that she thinks she deserves. That may be a narcissistic trait she has because it's always about me with her. I've noticed I have a $15,000 wedding ring. I have a Mercedes. All this other stuff is always about her.
Yeah, he's showing his professor side right now. Well, apparently so. I suspect that very few of these conversations that Anita claims to have had occurred, though. I certainly can't see Malaya getting all close and chatty with Anita, that's for sure. He does every time. Every time. He can't help it. Look, what Daniel is enjoying here is putting the spotlight on someone else. Putting the spotlight on someone who is actually a more extreme version of him. Because what he's describing here is the character traits that he's pulling out when he talks about Anita is him. Aside from the $15,000 wedding ring, which we know is a $3 ring from Temu, which isn't even a wedding ring because she's not even married. But, you know, we'll forgive her that, won't we? That's the least of her lies. Yep. So 100% the whole Darbo thing. And right now, I mean, he's loving being able to throw shade on people. First of all, you get the 8:28 phone call, which gives him a chance to attack Malaya and make Malaya look like the bad person. And now the topic changes to Anita. And you'll notice that Daniel and Janie both love talking about Anita because they can put as much crap on her as they like, and they know that people will accept it because people see exactly what a scammer she is. Oh, I'm so glad he doesn't repeat that, because that woman makes me sick when she says that. She's got this weird thing in her head going on. She's got this fixation with Lily. And I don't like it. Especially not when she just completely forgets about Jack. She's got these little fantasy stories in her head about Lily. And it stresses me out so much. Just let me mute myself for a sec. Sorry, I had to have a little bit of a cough. I've had issues with my asthma the last couple of mornings. The moment you get a bit of frost, it's like suddenly the asthma kicks in. I could say what I believe it's about, but it's probably something that's best discussed in a members-only live stream. And obviously it would only be speculation. But I don't think she's really talking about Lily when she gets into this mode of Lily did her job. But I'll leave it at that, and I might do a live stream for the members at one point where I do discuss the psychology of it. Now, obviously, I'm not a psychologist, but just to try and give people a bit of an understanding of where I think all this is coming from. Anyway, so he's reveling in crapping all over Anita. We all love to crap all over Anita because she's such a scamming, well, she's Scam-Anita, says it all. You know, the scary thing is, he's correct. I'm just going to run it back a little bit because I stopped before he finished that whole bit. So just run it back a few seconds. And we'll listen to the whole thing that he says about Anita. And then I'll address it.
Is she seeks validation. There was some aspect of her life where she never received the validation that she thinks she deserves. Malaya, like what? These are all just massive clickbait shit because, you know, I think like Anita's main thing is she seeks validation. There was some aspect of her life where she never received the validation that she thinks she deserves. That may be a narcissistic trait she has because it's always about me with her. I've noticed. I have a $15,000 wedding ring. I have a Mercedes. All this other stuff is always about her. And I think she just likes that people are acknowledging her as a person. Maybe
I need to create some sort of YouTube short with him saying it's all about me with her. Yep, Daniel, sure. I'm glad you recognize that with Anita, because it's not about you at all when you talk, is it? Although I think the difference is that with Daniel, it's not so much about seeking validation because in his mind, he's got the validation. So I think there's a difference there. Because in his mind, he believes he's got the validation. He believes he's Professor Dan. He knows it all. Everyone should accept his word because he does know it all. And he's never wrong. Anita, it's possibly not validation, but attention. It's yep. That's, you know, when you're a professor, you've got to publish, especially if you've got tenure. So there's an expectation to publish. So that's what he must be working on right now. He's working on a paper on the psychology of Scam-Anita. Her cup definitely runneth over with validation lately, and that's too disturbing. That's why I'm saying it's not so much about validation for her. It's about the attention, which is a different thing. Validation is you need the attention and you're craving the attention, but you don't know if you're worthy of the attention. Whereas with her, she's just demanding the attention. She definitely needs the attention, but she thinks she's worthy of it. She thinks people believe her crap. It doesn't help that she's got a vodka addicted guy who fawns on her every word. So there's a subtle okay, talk about brain leak, and I hope most people didn't catch what just came out of my mouth. Moving on. Yep. That's what it is. Sorry, may just slip up, and I'm just really hoping that, having said that, I know people are going to run it back now and listen to what I said. And I'm just going to leave it in there. Callie got me. Okay, we're off to a good start today. That right there, folks, is an example of leakage of the brain throwing out something that should not be said. Holy moly. Okie dokie. Trying to talk about oh dear. It's just going to be one of those days, isn't it? It's just, I think I set the mood with that Daniel video and it's just going to go downhill from there. I do realize that I do need to do a new Scam-Anita video. We've got one which I like, but it's time for another one, I think, definitely. But I won't use that because that's possibly crossing a line, really. My brain sometimes leaks. I'm not as bad as Daniel, but anyway, yeah, he's pointing out lots of his own qualities, though. He's funny that he can notice that, you know, she's a narcissist. Although he does at one point admit he's a narcissist and then retracts it and says, well, I'm not really. But, you know, he's right in terms of she has to present this whole thing of, look at me. You know, using images that are from 2016, 2018. If you go back through like her Facebook and Instagram, you'll see that these images that she uses are like nearly 10 years old. The flashing this Temu ring, this plastic Temu ring, and claiming that it's a what is it, white gold with diamonds or something like that. It's like, yeah, nah, honey, that's not a white gold ring. And then I have a screenshot, which I think I showed at some point in time, of when she did that driving tour of Truro, and she had the exact same evil eye thing as a dangling thing from the mirror of her car. But, you know, that evil eye thing is like, you know, a super expensive white gold ring. It's definitely all about appearance with her. There's so much narcissism there. And she just really, really needs attention. Which I think, you know, Janie nailed it when she called her, I need attention. She had it 100% correct. Yep, definitely not enough attention as a child, potentially too much of the wrong sort of attention. Definitely some childhood issues there. Definitely some mental health issues going on. But it's just amusing hearing Daniel with his psycho babble, thinking he's an expert on Anita when a lot of it sounds like him talking about himself. It's just so funny hearing him talk about her, saying her being the whole me. I agree. And that's the less amusing side of it, because I do believe that whatever's going on with her, she's either been on meds and she's stopped, or she's, whatever it is, something has triggered it off and she needs to be on meds. And that's not me joking around. That's me being serious. I haven't listened to that live stream in over a month. But there are some real standouts when you listen to things she says, and I just think, holy crap. You know, she has the potential where this could escalate into something dangerous. But I'm not going to go down that track right now. We need to be focusing on Daniel. Welcome in, Ernestine. Okay, so a little bit more from him about Scam Nita.
She lacked that aspect of validation growing up, or her childhood, or adulthood, or male validation, or just social validation in general.
Daniel, do you take responsibility for Jack and Lily missing?
This is going to be a narcissistic thing that I'm going to say. That I'm going to say no, because I spend every morning that I don't work laying in bed with Meadow sleeping.
Okay, and I will run a little bit of that back. Good on Sunny. Who's doing this? This is Sunny. I've put the wrong banner up. Okay, seriously need to get my brain working today. Okay, that's the right banner. Suddenly went, hang on, that doesn't sound like Charmaine. Good on Sunny for just throwing this at him out of the blue. Do you take responsibility for Lily and Jack missing? Now, he's just been accusing Anita of being a narcissist, and straight up he says, no, this is going to be a narcissistic thing. And he says, straight out, he says, I'm going to say no. Welcome in, Sher. Good to see you. Note that before he even gets to no, he's got to do all this preparation. Because his brain isn't going to let him just outright say no, he doesn't take responsibility, because he knows that's not actually the truthful answer. So you get this whole, the narcissistic thing first. And he says, I'm going to say 3 times. It reminds me of Jen Soto with every time she's about to come out with something that's not so truthful, she says, I want to say. And I think this is very similar. I think if you translate what's going on in his head, it's, I'm going to say this, but it's not actually the truth. Yep, exactly. Did everything. He got them ready for bed. He got them ready for school. He got their breakfast of the morning. He nappy changed them. He taught Jack how to zip his zipper. Malaya didn't do anything until now. And I will talk about that more in a sec. But he's working his way up to saying no. Because he can't just outright say, no, look, I don't take responsibility. That's all on Malaya. Because it's not truthful. In his head, he knows that he is 100% responsible for Lily and Jack being missing. So you get the I'm going to, like 3 times, I'm going to say 3 times. And he's like, I'm going to say answer, however. He can't even spit it out before he says no. So you've got the repetition, you've got the immediate deflection onto Malaya. And of course, here's where he's going back to the original narrative of they were in bed, the children went missing. What he's forgetting in the logic of this is that if he's trying to say, I'm not responsible because Malaya's the one who should have been up supervising them, that kind of craps all over his story of I'm not responsible because Malaya's the one who snuck them out to a vehicle and put them in a vehicle. So he's forgotten what his narrative is meant to be. Welcome in, Gaspagal, when you actually get to this point in the audio. Spot on. Spot on. He thinks his narcissism comes from the ADHD. Now, there's a difference. With ADHD, you can find this false confidence because a lot of people with ADHD have a lot of insecurities, and this is coming from me directly, because you do get a lot of negative sanctions growing up. You get told so often in many different ways that that you're a failure. You know, you stop fiddling, all that sort of stuff. Why didn't you do this? You know, you should have done this. This should be easy for you. And a lot of people with ADHD mask it with a false confidence. But with Daniel, it's not a false confidence. It's sheer narcissism. He truly is a narcissist. Exactly. For me, that's the big thing that shows me that he does not have ADHD. And I'd really like to know who this supposed professional is that diagnosed him as having ADHD. Because had they listened to any of this audio, they might reassess what they're thinking there. Welcome in, Seashell. Good to see you here. So now we get to the crapping all over Malaya phase. I've forgotten that we're meant to be not going with the narrative of the children wandered off. I've forgotten that I said the children never wandered into the woods. So I'm going to use that to throw shade on Malaya for not looking after the kids. Either that or it was one of those online quizzes you do. But the other side of it too, I could imagine someone like Daniel looking at the DSM diagnostic thing online first and figuring out what he has to answer, because that is the sort of thing he would do. But certainly there's a lot of online quizzes these days that people do and then go, I've got ADHD. But there's so much more to it. Bingo. You've hit the nail on the head. It's not ADHD. It's years of mathematics that have just destroyed the dopamine receptors. It has the same effect as ADHD. That the dopamine is absorbed far too quickly, far too readily. There's none in reserve. So you're just constantly trying to get that new dopamine hit. Yeah, that's all in remission now. Of course it is. Yep. Of course it is. We all believe that too. Oh dear, he's so full of it. Really, really is truly full of it. Okay, so let's hear about him lying in bed with the baby every morning, and that's the reason why he's not responsible for Lily and Jack going missing, even though that doesn't actually fit in with his usual narrative.
This is going to be a narcissistic thing that I'm going to say.
Answer it however.
That I'm going to say. No, because I spend every morning that I don't work laying in bed with Meadow sleeping because Meadow needed to get as much sleep as possible because she was only a year and a half old. I spend every morning that I don't work in bed with Meadow sleeping. Well, Malaya would get the kids up for school and I lay in bed with Meadow so to make sure she doesn't wake up so she gets as much sleep as possible.
It's always possible that he's buying meds off someone else. Because, you know, that happens. I would be surprised, very surprised, unless it's someone with possibly less than great ethics. Oh yeah, convenient, isn't it? Right before Lily and Jack went missing, that's when he just cold turkey. No more addiction issues. You know, because that's how it works, especially when you're a mathematician. Dunno. Do they do that, or do they just make them go cold turkey? That's a curious question. Yeah. It's like wake up and I just lie in bed with her. He's forgetting all his stories. His stories just do not fit together. Now, I'm going to replay this bit. And when you are listening to it, pay attention to the way he's using tense. Because what he's doing here, this whole bit, he's got a mix of past and present tense when he's talking. And it's significant because, and I'll explain it more in a moment, but I'll run it back so you can hear it. So pay attention to when he's talking in present tense and when he's talking in past tense. And bear in mind, we're talking about a situation that happened over a year ago. And we're talking about a routine that no longer exists, a routine that has not been in place for over a year. So listen carefully to when he's using past tense and when he's using present tense, because that'll show you the lies.
$15,000 wedding ring. I have a Mercedes. This is going to be a narcissistic thing that I'm going to say.
Answer it however.
That I'm going to say. No, because I spend every morning that I don't work laying in bed with Meadow sleeping because Meadow needed to get as much sleep as possible because she was only a year and a half old. I spend every morning that I don't work in bed with Meadow sleeping. Well, Malaya would get the kids up for school and I lay in bed with Meadow so to make sure she doesn't wake up so she gets as much sleep as possible. I didn't.
So he's given himself away. Because what he's saying here is, I spend every morning that I don't work laying in bed with baby M. He doesn't, because that doesn't happen anymore. So when someone is explaining something and they switch between past and present tense, what is happening there is present tense is a constructive narrative because it is them working on the narrative in their head. They're not recalling something. They're not looking back and referring to a memory. It's something that is constructed in their head, so it doesn't have a place in time. Because it doesn't have a place in time, it exists in the moment that they're telling it, so it becomes present tense. I hope I'm not kind of using too much word salad to try and explain that there. But basically what you're getting here is all this stuff referring to him laying in bed with baby M, he's giving it in present tense. And then he gives some of the things that are factual. So, baby M needed as much sleep as possible because she was only a year and a half old. Well, I probably wouldn't argue with that. I don't think she really needed to sleep for 10 hours, which is what they're implying, or 11 hours if Malaya put them to bed at 9. So that's when he shifts back to past tense. But then he goes back to, I spend every morning that I don't work in bed with baby M. So again, he's shifted back to present tense. This is a constructed narrative. And he admits here Malaya would get up with the kids for school. So again, he's actually admitting that it was Malaya that got them ready for school usually. And he switches back to present tense again, talking about laying in bed with baby M. So he's trying to say, I'm not responsible for Lily and Jack going missing. He jumps on this narrative that he's constructed, which he gives himself away because of the mixed tense. But he also is crapping all over his own narrative because he's already said so many times he did not believe they wandered off. But saying, no, I'm not responsible because I'm not the one responsible for supervising them of a morning, is essentially saying it's Malaya's fault that they wandered off and got lost because she's the one who's meant to be watching them of a morning, which contradicts his actual narrative of they did not wander off. Wow, that's impressive, Kelly. Very, very few people could go cold turkey. Very few. I doubt Daniel could, that's for sure. Daniel is nowhere near the person that you are. Let's just establish that. Yeah, now the only exception to that would be if the baby was a cranky baby that didn't sleep and kept you up all night. But it doesn't appear to be the case. According to what Daniel and Malaya are telling us, the baby was sleeping for 12, 13 hours of a night. So that would be the perfect time to get up and get some housework done. Yeah, it also well and truly contradicts his story that he did everything. He's the one that got them up and got them ready for school. He's the one who gave them breakfast. He's the one that fed them. Even though we later hear that, Malaya apparently is actually a good cook, which is, one point to her. He bathed them. He talks about when he was showering Jack, which I was uncomfortable with, the water over his face, and I'm address that another time. He's the one that potty trained them, but apparently now none of that happened, and it's not his fault because the children clearly wandered off, and it's all Malaya's fault because she wasn't out of bed supervising them. I've heard that. I've heard that cold turkey can be dangerous, but, you know, takes a really strong sort of individual to be able to achieve that, that's for sure. Well, we've got that photo of Lily when they're sitting on that, like an ATV or something in a sports store. And she looks like she's got to be 4 or 5 probably. And you can tell that she's wearing a pull-up or a diaper underneath her little shorts. They really didn't look bathed or fed or potty trained or anything like that. Oh yeah. It can lead to all sorts of catastrophic side effects, which can be fatal, that's for sure. Not to mention the psychological side of it too. Okay, so we're going to keep going with it's not my fault.
No, the kids weren't going to school. I said that right off the bat. I said that to Commander of Operations of Search and Rescue. Like, I wouldn't have kept the kids home that day. Lily popped her head a couple times into the room. She didn't have a cough. She didn't seem sick. So why keep them home?
Welcome in, Dawn. Sorry, that's my brain just trying to think in terms of the documents. I'm trying to think when it was, which particular date it was that he told the commander of search and operations or whatever that he wouldn't have kept the kids home that day, because I do remember reading it in the documents. But I think that was, clearly trying to throw crap on Malaya. And I wouldn't be surprised if, when you look at the dates on the documents, that it's going to come up as that he said that after Malaya left. But he's very defensive here. Very, very defensive. I said that right off the bat. He doesn't like being asked, are you responsible for the children going missing? And he has to deflect, so he's going straight to it's Malaya's fault because she's the one that decided to keep them home. It's Malaya's fault because she's the one that should be supervising them because my job was to stay in bed with baby M. Yep. Lily popped her head in several times. And he didn't question the fact that Malaya's asleep in bed and Lily is sticking her head in. But yeah, he wouldn't have kept them home. It's, yeah. Sorry, I was reading chat at the same time and got slightly sidetracked. Seashell, there is the video for Parker, the tribute that I made. I dropped it out yesterday, kind of in the evening, as just a single video too. I'm guessing it didn't get out into the algorithm because it's not been really viewed by many people at all. I will add the link for that. But yeah, I the tribute video for Parker is out there as a separate video. Welcome in, Princess Pillow. Good to see you here. Welcome in anyone else who I haven't greeted. Yeah, so much deflection here, so much BS. He's been working very hard to separate himself from this fictional decision to keep them home from school, when the reality is they weren't going to school anyway because they weren't alive Friday morning. But he's got to cling on to this narrative and throw it back on Malaya. And this also tears apart his own narrative that he's pushing, because he keeps pushing that he wouldn't have made the decision to keep them home from school if they were sick. But that doesn't tie in with him pushing the idea of the children being put in a car and taken away. Because logically, you wouldn't be calling them in sick if you were just going to... well, you would call them in sick, but you wouldn't be... I can't get the words right now. Hopefully someone knows what I'm trying to explain here. Basically, he's still pushing the they wandered off narrative by claiming that, well, it wouldn't have been his choice to call them in sick, when he's basically offering up the Malaya decided they still were unwell and that's why she called them in, as opposed to, gee, it's suspicious that she called them in sick because then she put them in a vehicle and had someone drive them away. I'm not sure if I'm really differentiating that very well right now. But all the shade that he's throwing on Malaya is basically based around that original narrative of the children just wandering off and getting lost. Yeah, he's like totally desensitized. Yep. They're all innocent. Of course they are. Totally. 100%. Okay, where are we? So she kept them home, you know, and he's the hero because he wouldn't do that. He would do the right thing. If it was his choice, he would have sent them to school because they missed too much school. So he's got to throw shade on Malaya again. It's a double whammy. And any time he's trying to throw shade on Malaya, he forgets his narratives. He forgets what he's trying to sell for his own benefit. Yeah, who knows what he thinks now? He needs a bit of time to come up with a new story, apparently. I would hope that RCMP have got all of these, because according to Chris McDonough, the RCMP have got some really, really good statement analysts. And we know that in one of his interviews, Rob McCammon did mention statement analysts. So, you know, if they've got all of this, they'd be laughing. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to... Thank you. That's what I'm trying to explain. It's a hole in the narrative. Because if he's trying to push for, well, I don't believe that she should have called them in sick because I didn't hear Lily coughing and because they've had so many sick days, he's acknowledging, he's accepting the original narrative of Malaya called them in sick. So they were home and they were unsupervised by Malaya and they ran off. So this is ADHD in play right here, people. What I'm trying to say is right there in my brain, and the words aren't coming out right. But essentially, it's a massive hole in his narrative, because it's going back to the premise of that the reason they were called in sick, the reason they were called in was because Malaya thought they were sick, and that because of that, they wandered off. True. Oh, heck yeah. And a bib. He's leaking all over the place. So true. Oh dear. Yep. Okay. This is probably a good spot for me to play the second one. I haven't decided between these two Daniel versions yet, but I'll play the second one now just for a bit of a brain break for me. I'll put that up first. Did he think people would stalk? Oh, yeah, I do think so. That's a good point. He was doing everything he could to get people to throw shade on Malaya. And if people stalked her, that was good in his opinion. Okay, so here's the second version.
Well, I met Professor Dan down at the county store. He said, I've got a brain map and a whole lot more. He had a 5 eyes word and a shiny new grin, straight from the online thesaurus he was catching them in. He said vivid means cheap and opaque means clear. I said, Dan, that ain't right. He said, I learned it this year. He talked so slick you'd swear he knew the town, till you listen real close and the meaning fell down. He could tell you all about a polygraph test, every wire, every needle, every puff in the chest, what the sweat on your palm means, what the blink of your eye, how the little machine knows if you're telling a lie. He described it in detail, every minuscule part, but the facts went missing like a hole in his heart. He was accurate sounding, but that's where it ends, a mile of good spelling and a yard of no sense. And he leaned right in like he had the cure for every old problem a person endures. Psychobabble, he'd murmur, I know how it goes. Then he'd trip on the jargon from his head to his toes. Professor Dan, oh Professor Dan. He reads one page and he thinks he can. Professor Dan, Professor Dan, oh Professor Dan, Professor Dan. All that noise, no understand. Professor Dan, oh Professor Dan. He's an expert on hounds and the scent in the air, on police line chalk and a flashlight glare, on search and rescue where the mud runs deep, on the way a lost soul breaks in a secret won't keep. He'll talk addiction, trauma, ADHD, like every psychiatrist calls him up for free. Doc, what's your advice? He'll say with a grin, then he'll answer himself before the truth gets in. Professor Dan, Professor Dan, oh Professor Dan, Professor Dan. He reads one page and he thinks he can. Professor Dan, Professor Dan, oh Professor Dan, Professor Dan. All that noise, no understand. Professor Dan. Well, he's got every answer in a digital pile, but the more he explains it, the less it feels like he's got confidence, sure, and a dazzling pose, but he's mixing up wisdom with the words he chose. Now he's 10 feet taller in the key of G, still wrong as a fence post, plain as can be. He's a master of nothing, but he sure loves the sound of his own big opinion circling around. So if you need a lesson what not to do. Call Professor Dan and prove it to you. He's full of big talk and a borrowed brain. Every word sounds smart, but it lands in the drain.
Professor Dan.
Oh, okay. I don't know why that's cut off like that. I must have screwed up. But you get the gist anyway. I'm kind of leaning towards the first one, but I think I can be convinced by people in terms of preference. I think they've got him figured out, but what it comes down to is, and Rob McCammon has said this himself, they want to make sure that everything is done to judicial standards, which means that they are crossing all their T's and dotting all their I's. And I also believe that the charges that have been brought against him, when you hear someone from RCMP talk about what happened to Lily and Jack as being a fundamental wrong, that to me says that they believe that it was something violent. I get tight in the chest when I talk about this sort of thing. I believe that these charges against Daniel are something that they want to be able to use as part of a prosecution to prove a history of anger management issues, a history of violence, and possibly also in connection with his addiction stuff. It does feel like it's too long, but I do feel that they're just being really thorough and really trying to make sure that when charges are laid, that they are going to get a conviction. It's frustrating for us, but there's a lot that's got to go on behind the scenes. They've got to convince a jury beyond reasonable doubt. And part of that means that any possible scenarios that could be used to create reasonable doubt have to be thoroughly investigated and laid to rest. So if there is any sort of alternate theory that a defence team could put forward and say to a jury, you can't convince him because you can't be 100% sure that this alternative isn't possible. They've got to make sure that they've investigated any other possible options, because otherwise the defence will run with it. But they've also got to have enough, especially in a no-body case, they've got to have enough circumstantial evidence that, for starters, if the defence decide to have something, they might look at something and say, we want to argue that this is not going to be admissible in court, and they come up with a good reason. It can destroy a case if you haven't got enough circumstantial evidence. If the defence come forward and manage to get something made inadmissible that is like a pivotal part of your case. So it's got to be strong enough to stand up to any sort of challenges like that in the pre-trial period. That there's a lot of hard work that goes into getting it to the point where it can go to a jury and where it can get past all the pre-trial challenges and things like that and still convince a jury. But I hate it when he says that. And I hope that they find them. They need to be found. They really do. But I do think there's a very good chance that when arrests are made, they're all going to happen simultaneously, and that there will be warrants served on properties at the same time for searches. I hope so, anyway. To me, it does. It sounds like it. You would be... Thanks for coming in, Teresa. Good to see you in here. You would be hoping that they would be found. To come across as so cocky, especially when he says, well, I've got to be positive. So to, on one hand, be so cocky and say, I've got to be positive, and then turn around and be so certain that they're not going to be found, that is a major, major admission there, right there. And they've got to make sure that there is nothing that a defence team could use to create reasonable doubt in terms of the possibility of the children being still alive. Nobody who is not involved, I think that's a double negative. If you didn't know what happened to those children, if you weren't involved, you would not be confidently saying they will never be found. You might say that you were afraid that they might never be found, but you're not going to be confident that, no, they're never going to be found. Rob McCammon referenced that again recently in his most recent one, and he said, essentially, we told you a year ago that we believe they were deceased. He's kind of made it pretty clear that that's what they believe. Yep. Same with Darius. They were far more open about Darius's case, and they also were quite clear in stating that Darius's case did not fit the criteria for the $150,000 reward because he had simply wandered off and gone missing. It was something that was not overly remarked on at the time. I think I might have briefly mentioned it, but that tells you a lot there. There's cases in Canada as well there's a case, a young guy, everybody knew who was responsible for it. It took them, I think Belinda said it took about 2 years. That they have definitely successfully prosecuted no-body cases in Canada as well. These days, when it comes to forensics, there is so much more that they can get in terms of circumstantial evidence, forensic evidence. An autopsy is kind of almost secondary these days when it comes to prosecution. It can be damn good. You just have to look at Suzanne Morphew, because from finding her remains and doing the autopsy, they discovered that a sedative dart had actually gone into the bone, and they found the they could find the exact like chemical composition of this particular sedative that had been shot at her in a dart, and they could track that directly back to Barry Morphew. And the thing with that is that it is one that it's not like you just buy it in the shop. It's one that you have to have a permit for, and it's one where basically he was the only person, other than like national parks kind of people, he was the only person in the area that had a permit for this BAM stuff, the only person that actually had any of this BAM stuff. So it makes the case so much more solid that they had Suzanne's remains and that they can use these results from the autopsy to really nail Barry Morphew. Exactly. It takes longer. Things would speed up immensely if they happened to discover Lily and Jack's remains. If there was any evidence from their bones, because sadly now they're pretty much only going to have some DNA samples. I don't want to go down that road. Yeah, especially if they found them on Mackenzie property. I think their bones will tell a story. But I don't want to dwell on that too much. Thank you, Cool J. Jennifer Hillerpenny. I've heard of this. I haven't actually looked into it. No-body conviction, 4-year-long Mr. Big operation. Yep. And sometimes it takes that. When you don't have a body, when you don't have solid evidence from an autopsy, you've got to make sure you convince a jury with solid circumstantial evidence. So it does make a lot more work and it takes longer. But I do think it can be achieved. I do believe we are going to see justice for Lily and Jack. Now that's the other thing too, Seashell. It's quite likely that the RCMP found more than what we know. All we've been told about is the piece of blanket, the boot prints on the pipeline, and Daniel crowing about the boot prints or boot print, depending on who you listen to, in the driveway. You have Daniel in those early days constantly saying, I'm surprised they haven't found more evidence, like he expected them to do so. You have Janie talking about the boot prints in terms of that they were supposed to be found. There's a lot that I think that we don't know. And I mean, yep, that's you're going where I was going. They have footage from 6 drones. They had a drone up within the hour. Day 1, they had 2 helicopters up, and the first helicopter was there within the hour. We know that Daniel and Janie were out and about all day on day 1. Now, they've got something like 8,000 images from the drones and the helicopters. They've got thousands and thousands of hours worth of video from the drones and the helicopters. I can guarantee that if they're doing their job properly, that they will have tracked Daniel's movements on day 1 and day 2. I also think that they've got more when it comes to the vehicle coming and going overnight, because we had that most recent statement from Rob McCammon where he kind of leaked, yeah, that forms part of the investigation. And I can't help thinking that they've got more on that than what we've been told. Welcome in, Denise. Good to see you here. So not only that, they've had, Rob McCammon has referred to a lot of technology that they have used, including drones with LiDAR. That's the ground mapping ones, which, like I said yesterday, are going to be so much more accurate than what I've shown you with the ones that I pull up from the internet. I'm good, Summer Breeze. I'm raring, making new songs. Busy day ahead. But yeah, welcome in. Now I am keeping track on the time because I do have something coming up later, so I can't go late. Anyway, a little bit more of that's not it. A little bit more of Daniel talking about Daniel, the hero who wouldn't have kept the kids home from school, who's forgotten that actually that kind of doesn't fit in with his narrative. But let's go. Oh, whoops. We had that wrong.
A lot. I know that Jack and Lily, like I've been open about this at the start, but there's been so much information over the last year. A lot of the stuff I said kind of gets diluted with the amount of bullshit that's come out.
Where does that come from, Daniel? Oh, I haven't had a chance to check out those. I haven't checked out my email this morning. I will look at them. I'm not sure if I'll be doing a second live stream today because I'm kind of got stuff going on after this live stream. So I may not have time to prepare for a live stream for this evening, which would be tomorrow morning your time. So at this point, I'm going to say no. If I get organised, I might, but I don't think it's going to happen. Here's a clown. Here's a clown. A lot of stuff that he said at the beginning gets diluted because of the amount of bullshit that's come out. Tell us about that, Daniel. Because where did all that bullshit come from? Because you might want to look in the mirror. He's throwing shade at imaginary people. Oh, you sent them 2 or 3 days ago. Oh, I need to check. I know I have not been keeping up with my emails and messages very well in the last couple of days. I've also been struggling to keep up with responding to people's comments and stuff, and I do apologise for that. There are just times when I just don't quite manage to keep up with all that, but I will definitely go looking for them after the live stream. So yeah, Daniel and his, oh, there's so much BS going on. And now we get this whole thing of the, oh, they've just got such low immunity and they get sick really, really easy. And what he's going to say next annoys the crap out of me. I'm just going to say that.
So why keep them home? He kept them home a lot. I know that Jack and Lily, like I've been open about this at the start, but there's been so much information over the last year. A lot of the stuff I said kind of gets diluted with the amount of bullshit that's come out. But Lily and Jack always had pretty low immune systems, so they would get sick easily. There was like a lot of times that they brought home stuff from school, or we had COVID, or many things. But that's not Lily and Jack's fault for getting sick. That's like when children go to daycare, they bring home stuff. That's not their fault. It was never their fault for not going to school.
We've got a new part to the narrative. Daniel has heard people talking about him and Janie victim shaming. But because he's a narcissist, because he doesn't understand empathy, he doesn't really have a full grasp of what people mean when they talk about victim shaming. So what's he grasping on? Oh, it's not their fault that they got sick. It was never their fault for not going to school. It's a two-pronged thing. Again, it's throwing crap on Malaya, but it's also a response to people turning around and pointing out that him and Janie have done so much victim shaming when it comes to Lily and Jack. Yeah, exactly. He doesn't understand how empathy works. So it's just a case of he knows that at this point, this is where he's got to try and act like he's got some empathy. So he's just now introducing this to try and sound like he's actually got empathetic and to try and sound like he's not really victim shaming. Such a good point. Yep. How many times did you keep them home from school because of the black eyes, Daniel? Because I'd like to know that. It's deflection from him completely. He's welcoming Belinda. Good to see you here. Oh, that is such a good point. I hadn't thought of it that way, but I reckon you are spot on. Definitely there is resentment because number one for him is baby M. So I could imagine that there would have been resentment for them bringing their germs home and making the baby sick. And I can guarantee that all three of those children had low immune systems. Even if I don't believe that they were necessarily getting the healthiest diet, I don't believe that their nutritional needs possibly were being entirely met. But when you add stress to a child's environment, trauma to a child's environment, because if a child is in a environment where there is DV, where there is any sort of tension between the parents, where if that goes on for a long time, that can also impact on a child's immune system. So there were a lot of things that probably did impact on their immunity, probably did result in them coming back home with whatever was going around at the school. Not only that, I mean, we're talking 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds who don't necessarily have the same sort of understanding of, you know, when you're playing with other kids, you know, the physical contact and stuff can be, they're more relaxed with that, so it's easier for them to pick up germs and stuff like that. And, you know, you get kids at that age who don't know how to use tissues and stuff like that. So many factors. The environmental factors as well. If there was mold in the home, and I would imagine there was probably quite an issue with rising damp, with the lack of insulation, with just the whole situation, if they were being sent to school in dirty clothes, like if Jack was wearing diapers overnight and he wasn't cleaned up of a morning before going to school, so many things there that could impact on their health. But this is such a good point that there is that resentment in there too, in terms of them making baby M sick, bringing it back. No, Darius was never found, sadly. And I think that's also a bit of what's going on here. He's trying to sound empathetic. He's trying to sound like he's not victim blaming. But it's that whole basically saying what you don't really mean. Because if he was annoyed at them for bringing viruses home and making baby M sick, then of course he would be blaming them for getting sick and bringing germs home from school. Anyway, I just remove that a little bit more. I want to stop before we get to the Tonka truck thing, because I want to go through that one with the documents, because that one is a very curious one when you look at what was said. So I just want to keep going with the talking about Lily and Jack and their immunity and stuff, but I do want to stop before the Tonka truck, because I think anyway, moving on.
A lot of times they were sick.
Well, okay, so let me ask you about this, because you said that on Wednesday.
Oh, okay. I've probably got time to do the Tonka truck if I have the dang it. Okay. I'll discuss it, but I will also start with it again tomorrow. Because this one we need to look at alongside what's been said in the documents. But it's on my iPad and I can't get it from my iPad to my MacBook for some reason while I'm live. So we'll go through this and then I'll tackle it tomorrow.
Day that Lily got a black eye from leaning over, I think, a Tonka truck or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I can explain that situation. You continue and then I'll explain it.
Straight onto it. I can explain that situation. You continue and then I'll explain it. Straight into defense mode. Not laughing about it and going, well, this is hilarious. You should have seen it happen. Wasn't good for Lily, but it was just one of those situations. No, it's straight up to defense. I can explain that. Red flag for me. The moment he jumps in and says, I can explain that. That's the first thing he's worrying about here. Not about the actual thing that happens. I mean, children hurt themselves. Thank you, Summer Breeze, very much appreciated. Children hurt themselves. They do things that, they fall over. They land on things. You don't become defensive and say, I can explain that. If it's an accident, because you don't need to explain it, because children do have accidents. They run too fast. They don't look where they're going. They tip up a Tonka truck and hit themselves in the face with it. Personally, I don't think that ever happened. And when I go through this alongside the documents, I really don't believe that happened. Yes, it's something that can happen. I believe that he is talking about something that did actually happen to someone sometime in the past. But I don't believe that happened to Lily. But I will tackle that more tomorrow. But I just wanted to point out first that he's come out on the defense straight away.
Yeah, well, what I was going to ask about that is, I mean, was that in any way, shape, or form why they were not in school? Because no one's really talked about that besides you.
I was the only one. I brought that up, yeah. And I can go into depth on that when we were over at...
And again, note the bumbling. He's not jumping straight in. It's all the ums and ahs and ahs and the bumbling. And then straight again, we've got the... I can go into depth on that. He is stalling, even though he knows the narrative. But he's learnt, thanks to the dog handlers, thanks to content creators, he's learnt that he's supposed to add more detail to his stories. So he's stalling here to come up with more details. But sorry, I got distracted again. Her question is the black eye, is there a possibility that this is why they didn't go to school? That's the question. That's not what Daniel is answering. Daniel is still going into defense mode to explain a black eye. I think that in the footage from the day before, that there is footage of Lily with a black eye. Because Daniel's the one that introduced the idea of Lily getting a black eye. And I strongly suspect that that occurred after the footage was found. I don't know if he's brought it out as a topic because RCMP have asked him about it and he wanted to get ahead of the game, or if RCMP have said, we have footage, and he's gone, crap, I better talk about Lily getting a black eye and come up with an excuse for it. And maybe that's the reason why he's so determined to get the RCMP to show him the camera footage from the day before the children went missing, because he wants to see if the black eye is visible on the camera footage. Just throwing this out there. I just read Charlotte's comment. Seems we're on the same wavelength. I think that's the case. I think he's decided to be proactive when he found out about the camera footage. He's come up with a story to explain the black eye. And this seems to be the most logical reason in terms of why he's so keen to see the camera footage. Because he wants to see if they could see Lily's black eye. But just in case they can, he's got his story prepared. I think it comes down to the camera footage. But there's also a possibility of the bones telling stories like this. I suspect that they probably didn't tell the teachers much about their home life. I think at that age, they probably did form a trauma bond with one of their teachers. But I think at that age, they would have been too young to verbalise it. I agree. I think that the bruising was visible. That's why it hasn't been released. And that's why Daniel is desperate to get hold of it. Yeah, I think it's to do with the Dollarama stuff. He's worried that they've got footage that shows Lily's black eye. And maybe there was more than just a black eye. Maybe he's put out the black eye story and he knows there's additional injuries, or maybe Jack's got injuries as well. And he wants to see what shows up on camera. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. They're not going to release it if there's any evidence of violence at all. True. It would show if he's wearing exactly the same clothes the following day because he didn't go to bed. Good point. Okay, so he's going to explain the situation.
Patty's house, and like the big yellow Tonka trucks. There was like a big yellow dump truck, and if you push down on the back of the dump truck, the truck flips up, and they're the metal ones, right? It flipped up. I mean, Patty was sitting right in her leather chair, like she always sits in the living room. Me and her were sitting there. I think this might have been when Malaya was at the DMV or wherever she happened to go.
Okay, so he's gone into more detail here. Like I said, he's learnt from his discussion with the dog handler that just saying that they were playing and the truck flipped up and hit her in the face. Yeah, exactly. Only if you've got your face right in front of it. I will come back to this tomorrow in terms of what is said in the documents, because the documents just completely throw this story out the window, in my opinion. He's introduced here that Patty is sitting right there in her leather chair like she always does. It was her and me just sitting there. He's introducing a witness who's not going to verify his story, but whose existence we're supposed to believe means the story is real. The story is real because Patty's there. We're supposed to put aside critical and logical thinking here and believe that what he's saying here is Patty can support my story. But he doesn't go that far because he knows that's stepping into a territory that is dangerous, because he doesn't want anyone to actually approach Patty and ask her to verify his story. Not that Patty is talking to anyone, but he's creating a credible witness that can't be confirmed, essentially. It's the same strategy that Durwood has used a lot, and Daniel's adopted this strategy. Here's a witness. I'm telling you there's a witness, but don't go and ask them about it. But just know that it wasn't just me who saw it. Patty saw it too, so believe me. And then he's removing Malaya from the situation. I think Daniel's becoming a bit nervous about Malaya suddenly having an outlet, a public outlet. So what he's doing here, I believe, is intentionally removing Malaya from the situation on the off chance that she might come out and say Lily never hit herself in the face with the Tonka truck. So he's really working hard to shore up credibility. On one hand, you've got Patty, grandmother Patty, credible person apparently. She's not come out telling any lies or stories, so you're going to have to believe him because it's Patty. It's not him saying, Jordan saw this. That's proof that it happened. It's his alibi. But like I said, he's not going to go as far as saying go and ask her, she'll confirm it, because she won't, because it didn't happen. And then because he's nervous that Malaya will just destroy this, he removes her from the situation. Now, the problem with this, and I will go through it tomorrow straight up with the documents and stuff, is that we have different stories around the visit to Paddy's place. Paddy thinks they were there a few weeks ago, according to her statement. She doesn't actually place them having been there in the days before the children went missing. You have talk of Malaya going somewhere and Daniel waiting in the car with the kids. Daniel himself says that he waited in the car with the kids. I think Malaya might talk about going somewhere and leaving Daniel at Paddy's with the kids, but I can't remember. There's no mention of a Tonka truck. But the stories, what you see in the documents, don't give any confirmation of this story. Yeah, I think that's probably the case as well. Because when you look at Paddy's statement, Daniel doesn't feature. I think it was normal that if they went to Paddy's that Daniel would wait in the car. So the whole Tonka truck thing could really easily be debunked really quickly and really easily. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. I know it's slightly shorter than usual. Yep, that is the thing. What he's describing here is something that is significant. Had Lily done this, Paddy wouldn't be, I think they were here a week or so earlier. The first thing that would come to mind was, yeah, they were here on Wednesday and Lily hit herself in the face with a Tonka truck. Given that when Lily gets excited, she squeals in excitement, to me that says that she was a child who couldn't necessarily regulate her emotions all that well so that they would leak out. So a child that is going to squeal in excitement is also, if they've hit themselves in the face hard enough with a Tonka truck to cause a black eye, there's going to be a scene. And you can bet that Paddy would have remembered that and would have spoken about it. There is no mention of it in the documents. %, she would have been in a flood of tears. We're talking about, I mean, regardless of any level of emotional dysregulation that we see in the squealing with excitement, she was still a baby. Who wouldn't, at that age, have a complete meltdown if you hit yourself with a Tonka truck hard enough to the point where it came out in a black eye the next day? And you can bet that Malaya would mention it. Even if she wasn't there, even if she was out getting the plates for her car, you can bet. What is a little girl going to do when she's hurt herself? Mum's not there. Mum gets back. She's going to straight away have another meltdown, because it's the body's way of, or the mind's way of, seeking the comfort from the maternal figure. So even if Malaya was out, Malaya comes back and they've calmed Lily down, someone's going to be mentioning that Lily hit herself in the face with a Tonka truck. Lily's going to have another meltdown. It's just natural. It's the way it happens. It's the way the brain is wired. But there's no mention from Malaya of any of this. There's no mention of it in the documents. And not only that, they were told on day 2 that the baby couldn't be on the property, that the baby had to be removed from the property. Wouldn't you want to be upfront? Daniel's so very upfront now over the Tonka truck. If they were suddenly looking at you very closely and you knew that one of those missing children had a black eye, wouldn't you bring it up? Wouldn't it be in the documents? Jack was able to show Janie that he had a worm and he had a centipede. But apparently he wasn't close enough or they weren't close enough for her to see Lily's black eye. She claims she didn't see it because they were too far away. But she saw his worm and his centipede. Well, when you look at the wording from Cindy and Malaya, neither of them actually confirm that she saw them on FaceTime. And Daniel himself, I think, has destroyed that narrative as well, which I'll do in a video because I think it's something that I need to go into step by step again. Daniel has destroyed that part of the narrative. Janie has destroyed that part of the narrative. They have all destroyed each other's narratives without realizing that they are doing so. Quite possible. But then Daniel's really confident that the children won't be found. And welcome in, Misty, Anna. I think Daniel's so confident that the children won't be found that my belief is that he's worried about what they've seen on the CCTV footage. He's worried that the CCTV footage shows Lily with a black eye. Yeah, not enough detail. Daniel quoted the dog handler himself. He truly did. That's for sure. When you start to look at what they've all said, when you put it side by side, they've destroyed each other's narratives well and truly. everything from Thursday afternoon on just falls apart. Go get some rest, Summer Breeze. Thanks for coming in. Yeah, I think that's what the situation is, Charlotte. That's for sure. Anyway, I am on a bit of a time thing today, so I need to wrap this up. Thank you very much for coming in. I very much appreciate everyone who takes the time to come in and listen to my lives. Please hit the like button on the way out. That helps me out a lot. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. And of course, if you are listening on replay, or if you're just listening now and you want to make more comments, please do leave some comments below. Thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.